We're going to talk about the biggest draft fear for the Jaguar fans. Don't y'all get mad at me. I'm just a messenger. Listen up here on Locked On Jaguars.
You are Locked On Jaguars, your daily Jacksonville Jaguars podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
That's right. It is your team every day. I am the host of the Locked On Jaguars podcast, Tony Wiggins, and welcome to Locked On Jaguars, where it is your team every day. We always thank you for making us your first listen. Quick reminder, we're also free to subscribe to on our YouTube page. Head on over there, hit the like button, hit the subscribe, and then make sure you hit that bell so you get notifications each and every time we drop an episode. Also, wherever you get your audio podcast, make sure you listen in every single day and tap into that location to make sure that you don't miss an episode of Locked On Jaguars. Thank you every day to our everydayers for joining us. Shout out to you, the everydayers, making the special appearance that you do here every day. And we're glad to have you. And you can be an everydayer. All you got to do is show up here every day to Locked On Jaguars. Man, we got a good show here for y'all today. A real good show. I don't want to toot my own horn by calling it a good show. I just think it is. I'm going to tell you, as soon as I fix this little typo here, I'm going to tell you exactly what is going on here today on Locked On Jaguars. There's a fear, and I noticed it by watching, and that's why I'm glad that there's so much interaction that goes on online on what I call Jaguars Twitter. Now, it can be a little toxic sometimes, but that's a good thing. The thing is I noticed there's a prevailing, almost unanimous by accident thing that nobody wants to see here on draft night. There you go. I think I got that fixed now. There's something that people don't want to see. Before I reveal you and tell you what it is, I'm going to tell you in segment 2, we're going to talk about when right looks wrong. And that's the thing that nobody wants to hear. And I'm going to tell you why in segment number 3, I'm going to tell you why I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt. And I know coming from my mouth to the people that listen to Locked On Jaguars on a daily basis, that is a shock and a surprise that I am willing to give Trent Baalke, Doug Peterson, and the entire brass over at Jacksonville's headquarters. I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt. Kind of. So I'll tell you what that means in segment 3. But segment 1, Jags' biggest fear, apparently based on what I have seen and have been able to come up with through reasoning and through just common sense, just based on reading what people say. And the reason why it's important for me to do that without a bunch of interaction is because folks have a tendency when they talk to me, and I've been telling people this for years. There's a lot of people, I used to do radio here in Jacksonville. There's a lot of people that didn't know the same guy that was doing radio was also the same guy who was cutting hair. And I kept that very, very separated. I didn't go out of my way to do it, but I did it for a reason. Where I didn't also go out of my way to volunteer that I was the same guy. One is it's kind of like when I was on radio, I didn't want to talk about cutting hair. And when I was cutting hair, I didn't want to talk about radio. The other reason is because, believe it or not, I don't like debating. And I don't not like it because I don't want to hear other people's opinions. I just think sometimes, by nature, your debating is this. Even if I agree with what you say, I'm going to disagree with it and take the opposite side of it, because it's almost like what debating becomes is you got 2 lawyers. You tell one of them you're going to be the prosecutor and the other one is going to be the defense. And they have these rules they have to follow where they're going to, regardless if they believe what they're saying, they're going to say everything that they can to convince you to listen to them. So sometimes when I do that, and I found out people are too busy trying to convince you to listen to them, and as opposed to just telling you how they feel, they start telling you stuff that's going to really knock down what you're going to say back. So sometimes I'll listen and I'll watch and I'll engage without really debating, and I want to see what people really, really think. So I said all of that to say this. Jaguar fans really, really do not want this team to take an offensive lineman in the first round of the draft. I'm glad y'all let me go through that whole 1-minute spiel. And I know if you're listening, you're probably like, why is this dude just explaining why he doesn't like debating? I was explaining why I love listening to Jaguar fans, because it becomes evidently clear, real fast, that the thing that they don't want is they don't want this team taking an offensive lineman. They absolutely do not. They are sold, and that's different now than 6 weeks ago, because 6 weeks ago, all they wanted this team to take was Jackson Powers Johnson. One of the first things the Jaguars did in free agency is they took a center in Mitch Morse, right? He was out there. They actually didn't even have to wait until the free agency started because he was actually cut. So he was available to be signed early. Once they did that, there were still fans. There was a small amount of people that was like, they were still talking about JPJ, right? Play him at guard and play him at left guard. And then free agency starts and they re-signed Ezra Cleveland. And people say, well, you can put Ezra Cleveland in the right guard, still get JPJ. And then the Jaguars restructured Brandon Sheriff. And after that, people were like, I don't want no offensive lineman. Don't worry about it. We need a wide receiver because we lost Calvin Ridley, or we need a corner because we didn't trade for L'Jarius Sneed. So there's this constant moving around, and those things are based on what the team does or what it appears that the team is going to do. So that tells me that sometimes people's opinions start lining up with their expectation. Even if you don't think that they need a wide receiver or a corner, some fans know that that's the direction that they're headed, and they don't want to disappoint themselves. So they started looking at corners and wide receiver. And in the process of doing that, have become myopic to the fact or the possibility that there could be anything else that this team takes. And if they take anything else, that is going to be so disappointing. So that's why I've kind of spent the last few weeks, and people have been saying they're not taking this, they're not taking that, they're not taking this. It is my job to prepare the people that listen to this show for things that absolutely might happen. And if there's somebody that tells me that they know exactly what Trent Baalke will do, and if there's somebody else that tells me, without mentioning running back, quarterback, or off-ball linebacker, that they know what Trent Baalke is going to do and what he's not going to do, then guess what? Then you need to be working in this business, and you need to be charging people for your information. And if you know the answer, then you'll be a millionaire this time next year. Nobody knows anything. So it's my goal to prepare you for what you might not know or what you might know, right? The one thing I will use to try to do that is the opinion I already have formed based on me sitting back and not engaging and just watching Jaguars Twitter. You know, that whole spill I just gave everybody, the whole thing I just talked about me not liking debating because it tends to shake people. So what I did was I engaged without engaging. I watched all weekend. For a lot of people that do a lot of posting about the Jaguars, people that do really, really good stuff too, people that work in the business and people that don't work in the business. But I read a lot of stuff, right? And it gives me an idea of some of the things that I want to talk about, because you can't say that it's your team every day and not talk about things that your mind is going through. That's why I'm glad that people come here. I noticed that whenever there's something like some real big news, like I get way more engagement from people. And that's a good thing. Just because people know where to come every day. And they know it's going to be something that they want to hear, but also enlightens them. So that's what I'm doing. I'm telling you right now, Jaguar fans don't want an offensive lineman. Segment 2, I'm going to tell you exactly why. There's a possibility that that's what they might do. And if they did it, I don't necessarily disagree with it. I'm going to tell you why when doing the right thing looks wrong. When doing the right thing looks wrong. Trent Baalke is an old school general manager. Right, wrong, or indifferent, whether you like him or not, that's exactly what he is. It would not be the wrong thing to do at this point if you see a high ceiling offensive tackle on this board at 17, and you sit there and say, we really like Anton Harrison, and we really like this dude here too. And for the next 10 years, we can have both of them protecting Trevor Lawrence. And as soon as we make this pick, we're going to go ahead and call a moving company and run Cam Robinson straight up out of here, or try to trade him to somebody else. This is why I'm telling you it's not the wrong thing to do, even though it doesn't look like the right thing to do. When right looks wrong, I'm going to go even further. And this is really going to make you mad. I'm going to tell you the dude that it might be. I'm going to do it in just a second here on Locked On Jaguars. Today's show is sponsored and brought to you by FanDuel. That's right. It's playoff time in the NBA and NHL, and baseball is in full swing, and FanDuel is your place to bet on every game. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets, guaranteed. That's $150, win or lose. Bet on everything from slap shots to home runs to slam dunks, all on an app that is safe, secure, and easy to use. What are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet an automatic win. FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. And today's show is also brought to you by Monopoly Go. Now listen, if you're a fan of Monopoly, I know you're going to be a fan of Monopoly Go. And hopefully you've already seen how much fun it is and how competitive it can be by downloading it. But look, if you've been told that you're competitive, okay, sit down with some more competitive people. And if you have a competition side, play Monopoly Go. It's been downloaded 150 million times, and it's a great twist on Monopoly where you play not just one, but hundreds of Monopoly boards in crazy locations, building up amazing cities that bring you big, big money. But it's not just about being in competition. It's about teamwork and teaming up with a bunch of family and friends and having a good time around a lot of holidays, a lot of with the weather changing. It's time for all us to get together. So get in the game and join your friends and download Monopoly Go now, free on the App Store or Google Play. That's Monopoly Go now, free on the App Store or Google Play. Segment number 2 here on Locked On Jaguars with your team every day. We thank you for making us your first listen. As you know, today's show is sponsored by FanDuel. Make sure you go holler at FanDuel. Use promo code Locked On right now. I got to let you know, man, that sometimes in doing this, I put myself through a lot of stuff, going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, trying to figure out how I'm going to say something that I know is going to make a lot of people upset, right? And then I say, man, just be honest and just tell them, just tell them that if the Jacksonville Jaguars don't draft a corner or a wide receiver or an edge rusher or Johnny Newton, and they decide and they look up on that board and they get to number 17, and Tyler Guyton from Oklahoma is sitting there. Now, listen to me. I want y'all to hear me out. And if you're watching this, I'm laughing. It's because I know as soon as I said that, your jaw hit the floor. I got it. And if you're driving, pay attention to the road. Don't ever try to blame me for something that goes wrong. If you're at work and you're sitting at your cubicle and you're listening and you're sneaking and listening to this on audio, do not yell out a curse word or an obscenity and lose your job just because I made the choice to tell you that Tyler Guyton could be sitting there at 17 and be too much for Trent Baalke and Doug Peterson to contain themselves, and they make him the choice at number 17. I'll tell you why it ain't a horrible, horrible idea. Because I think he's one of those guys that has a tremendous upside and looks like an NFL, along with the Amarius Mims. They look like dudes that's going to play for 10 years and be on some all-pro teams. I am still about the business of protecting Trevor Lawrence at all costs. I am still about the business of protecting Trevor Lawrence at all costs. I'm also about the business of understanding that it's a business and that the Jaguars could do this for a number of reasons. One is because they just plan on immediately after the draft, either trading or during the draft, trading or letting go Cam Robinson and saving that money and putting Anton Harrison over at left tackle. The other reason why they could possibly do it is because they're saying, you know what? We've kind of missed on trying to figure out how to have these guys together for a longer period of time. Let's just go ahead and get this dude because we just think he's just going to be that good. And even if he's not ready, we'll have Walker we'll have Cam there for a little while until we actually get him ready. It wouldn't be the first time that Trent Baalke looked at a guy for his traits at the position. So first of all, you got to get over the fact that they're going to take an offensive tackle if that's what happens, because I know that's going to make a lot of people angry. And folks are going to say, we know we can't get Joe Alt, but if it's not Latham, I don't want anybody else. Or Fuaga, or maybe Futanu. That's it. I don't want anybody else. And we can address this later. I got you. I totally understand. If you're on the other side of this, I understand. That's why I'm saying it's not a debate subject for me. It's just I'm showing you the reason why this could possibly happen. Get past the position. And the reason why I'm pointing that guy out in particular, because that guy is the one guy that says to me, him and maybe Amarius Mims, but mainly him, because there aren't as many questions from a health standpoint. And they tend to like guys that have a larger body of work. I'm just sitting there telling you, at that position, most old school GMs believe you cannot go wrong ever by drafting an offensive lineman or a defensive lineman. They don't think you can ever go wrong by drafting someone in the trenches, especially if you need them either now or next year. And the Jaguars will definitely need a left tackle for next year. A lot of this also depends, I believe, on how the early part of the board goes. You have to start asking yourself a question that I brought up last week. Does it make sense for you to get the fifth or sixth best player at a position when you can get the second best player at a position? And I'm talking about, in this particular instance, I'm talking about specifically right tackle, and I'm not talking about the best on draft night. I'm talking about the guy that you believe is going to have the best career. And see, that's where a guy like Tyler Guyton comes in at. And the reason why he comes in there is because of those long-term traits I keep talking about. Because everyone and their brother and their sister believes that Tyler Guyton is the perfect choice for the Dallas Cowboys. Now, hear me out. Just about every mock I've seen, at least 75% of them have Tyler Guyton being mocked to the Dallas Cowboys. And you say, well, yeah, that's 8 picks later or whatever it is. Okay, but listen to the rationale that I keep saying. Everyone is saying that is such a Dallas Cowboy pick. If that is true, and I don't know if it's the case or not, I'm not telling you the Jaguars need to use what I'm telling you right now to base whether or not they pick him or not. And I'm not saying that you should use what I'm saying right now to base whether or not you like the fact that I'm telling you that he's a possibility. What I'm telling you to use it on is the argument that, oh my God, this is going to be the worst pick ever if they do that. I'm telling you, I said when right looks wrong, that means I'm acknowledging that it looks like the wrong thing to do. But here's the reason I'm using the Dallas Cowboys as an example. If there is one thing that they have gotten right over the last 25 years, it is their evaluation of offensive linemen. It is also their advanced evaluation of those linemen, early and middle round guys that they've been able to develop. And every single time they cycle through, their 6th or 7th guy is always being poached by some team to come and be a starter for their team. The one thing I won't criticize them for is their evaluation of offensive linemen over the last 25 or 30 years under Jerry Jones. So if a team that evaluates offensive linemen very well, and that have developed guys, drafted guys, and haven't missed very often in that position, if most people think that that team is mocking a guy or going to take a guy like Tyler Guyton, then what is it a part of my rationale that I can't sit here and think, well, maybe they're on to something? Because the Cowboys have been on to something for a very, very long time when it comes to this. And yeah, I'm reaching to try to figure out why this will work. But what I'm trying to tell you is this. Trent Baalke, if we're going to ignore the fact that I've said in the past that he hasn't been a great GM, or if we're going to make fun of the fact that he hasn't picked wide receivers very often and done very well, and he hasn't done this and done. So now I got to go from not only his traits, but I have to go to his history in order to figure out what it is that they might do at this spot. And there are two guys in this draft that I think have Trent Baalke written all over them. One of them is the guy I just told you about. The other one is Darius Robinson. And the only reason I'm not putting Amarius Mims into that equation is because Baalke doesn't have a tradition of using high picks on guys that have not played as much and don't have as much demonstrated performance. So that's why he's not included in this. I'm going to tell you the reasons why I got to these conclusions and why I decided that I was going to give the benefit of the doubt to Trent Baalke about all of this. I'll make sure that I get to that. But before, I have to tell you that Locked On NFL Mock Draft is available now. Find the ultimate 6-episode series on Locked On NFL Draft to hear who the local Locked On experts are picking for every NFL franchise, with live reactions from local college football experts and even the fantasy football angle. The Locked On NFL Mock Draft is available now. Locked On NFL Draft on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. All right, man, we're going to run it down here and get to it and tell you why the benefit of the doubt in this situation is so important. We'll do it in just a second here on Locked On Jaguars. After first let you guys know about Game Time, the Game Time app. That's right, man. Game Time is something serious. It is for real. And I'm going to tell you why it's for real. There's a lot of comedy shows. Cat Williams was in Jacksonville this week. You got Lil Duval and Mike Epps and all of those guys that are coming here this month. There are a lot of events and a lot of concerts going on. And many times, some of y'all's work schedule don't let you know whether or not you'll be off or you'll be able to go until the last minute. If that's the case, you need somewhere to buy tickets at the last minute, and someone that specializes in last minute deals, and that is the Game Time app. You need to download the Game Time app because they have a priority of last minute deals where you can save up to 60% off buying last minute for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, flash deals, zone deals, all in pricing. All of that stuff is at the Game Time app. You need to take the game work out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNFL, all one word, for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL, LOCKEDONNFL, for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Third and final segment here on Locked On Jaguars, where it's your team every day. We thank you for making us your first listen. If I have made you angry, I am sorry. I am just trying to prep you and prepare you for what you might think is the unthinkable, but have been trying to rationalize with you why it would not necessarily be the most unthinkable thing. The Jaguars have an obligation, and this would really, really give me another layer of respect for Trent Baalke, in that he's not looking at lining up the best team. He's not looking at making the best pick that makes him look like a hero. Okay. And regardless of what that pick is, both fans and guys like me, we're going to try to rationalize it and look at it from his perspective and first explain why he did it. And we'll do that, obviously, as soon as everything kicks in this week. We'll be able to explain exactly why he did and why he made the picks that he picked and made the picks that he chose to make. And I mean, they can all be explained. They can all be explained, and the rationales can be it. So we can do that before, and that's why I'm doing this. And I sat here and I'm going, if I'm thinking about how old school GMs think and they're going to think what is fiscally responsible and what's the right thing to do for this team, what could be the one thing that could tempt them off of taking the bait of making a pick that makes everybody happy, that's real, real sexy on the first day, that actually probably fills a box on day one better than it does on day 366. And the one that I'm thinking about is the offensive lineman. And it's not something that just came up by happenstance, because last week when I was discussing on our past episodes, and you can catch those wherever you get podcasts, audio or video, And you'll be able to see in there, one thing that I kept mentioning in a series is that the only thing that could make me jump off of the thinking that wide receiver is it, defensive back, edge, defensive line, the only thing that could make me do that and make me understand it would be if they see an offensive tackle that they believe is going to be very, very good over a 10-year period that could really anchor down on one side of the line and solve a long-term problem, even if that long-term problem isn't the biggest short-term headache or short-term issue that they have right now. Do I think they're going to do it? Absolutely not. I do not. But we have to say that if they are going to jump out the window or jump and lean and do something that's a little bit different from what we think would make the most sense, there has to be a real good reason for doing it. It has to be a special player at a position that is very, very high on the value chart. And after quarterback, you could always argue that the next thing is to protect the quarterback. And the best way to do that is find people that can block the best athletes that are on the front lines that can get to the quarterback quicker and to solve and settle that. And it also told me this week how many people that are not really sold on Cam Robinson. Most people, even if they say using this year, they'll acknowledge that something has to be done within the next calendar year. Folks will tell you right now that there's nothing that Walker Little has done to suggest that the team is going to prioritize him after he becomes a free agent at the end of this year, and that there's nothing that Cam Robinson has done over his career that makes you think that he's going to be a priority any further than he is right now. And maybe the team is always looking to improve. So if the team is really thinking like that, and if there's somebody over there playing devil's advocate, sitting on the table telling them, don't buy the shiny thing, don't do that. And I'm telling you, in every single building, in every single personnel department, there's one dude over there telling them to do the fiscal thing. Somebody is telling them to save some money and put it in the bank. Somebody is telling them when they're saying, well, I want to save 15% of my salary. They say, no, you need to save 30% and only live off your endorsement. Somebody is telling them to be as frugal as possible and to do the thing that really, you notice how when people take over an organization, you notice how people think just because Jim Harbaugh has taken over the Chargers, and even though offensive line is not their weakness, people still believe that at some point he's going to take an offensive lineman, not a receiver, not another corner, not a receiver to help his quarterback, not necessarily an edge rusher because all the edge rushers are older guys, not a nose tackle. They need linebackers. But you notice how everybody is lining Harbaugh up to possibly take Joe Alt or take some other offensive lineman because they believe he needs to build up the line, even though that's not necessarily their weakness. You know why they're doing that? Because he has a GM that came from Baltimore, because Harbaugh is known as an offensive line guy, because he said it, and because even if he hadn't said it, that's exactly what people would assume that he's going to do because of who he is. Old school. And I want you to remember that. Old school. It's not a bad idea, and I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt, because all they got to do is come in there and say, when all of the fans are angry and they make that pick, if they come in and say our priority is to make sure our quarterback stops running for his life, then everybody will go, oh, okay, that's why you did it. All right, well, we can make that determination now that we already know that that's a priority, right? And if that's the case, then we can also then say, if they did it, it ain't necessarily what we want them to do, but we totally understand. And let Tyler Guyton never get on the field out here in Jacksonville, and you see him and Anton Harrison out there blocking, and nobody gets close to Trevor Lawrence, ain't nobody going to believe Trent Baalke did the wrong thing. Nobody. All right, I tell you what, man, it's going to be interesting. We don't have to argue and debate about it because the pick will be made. And once the pick is made, Locked On has launched the first ever national 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. And now it's available on Amazon Fire TV in the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. You guys hang in there, man. We only got a couple more days before draft coverage. I'll give you everything that I got from here on out explaining any rumors or anything that I might hear when I'm listening. Until then, you guys make sure you stay tapped into Locked On Jaguars, where it's your team every day, and we always thank you for making us your first listen.